Learning Tractate Shabbos, page 150, Kuf Nun. We are at chapter 23, and the name of the chapter is Shoel. Shoel. So we'll start with the Mishnah. You should not hire workers on Shabbos. You're not allowed to tell your friend also to hire workers for you. One may not go to await nightfall at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of hiring workers or bringing produce after the Shabbos. But one may go to wait nightfall at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of guarding his property after the Shabbos. So you're not allowed to go there and wait till it gets dark to hire hire workers, but you're allowed to be there for the purpose of guarding. Yeah. Maybe Piros Bielda, and he may bring back produce in his hand. Klalom Abishol. Abishol stated the general rule. What was the general rule? Kol shani zakev amirosi rasha nilach shichol. Whatever I am permitted to instruct, I am permitted to await nightfall. So any activity that I am permitted to tell someone, Jew or Gentile, on the Shabbos to perform after the Shabbos, I'm allowed to go and wait for it, to do it myself. Why does the Mishnah need to distinguish between not hiring workers and not telling your friend to hire workers? What's the difference between you and your friend? I'm dealing with a non-Jewish friend. But telling a goy to do something for you is prohibited to Jews on Shabbos, is forbidden by rabbinic decree. Our Mishnah is not needed to teach this, because we already know the Isur Shvus, rabbinical prohibition. Even if you can even say that he has a Jewish friend. And why the Mishnah comes to tell me that it's prohibited, it's obvious. Kamash Malan, Mishnah is trying to teach us one is not allowed to tell his friend, hire workers for me, but one may say to his friend, shall we see whether you will join me in the evening after Shabbos? Will you join me? Money, and where our Mishnah is interpreted in this manner, whose view is it? Rabbi Menashe Amitay. Tanya is the view of Rabbi Menashe Amitay. Tanya, it was taught in the Bible, one may not say to his friend, shall we see whether you will join me in the evening? Rabbi Menashe Amitay says that you are allowed to say it. Shall we see whether you will join me in the evening? The law is in accordance with Rabbi Menashe Amitay. Rabbi Chana also said in the name of Yechonon, what is the reason Rabbi Menashe Amitay says you are allowed to tell somebody, will you join me in the evening? That which, because the Pasuk says in Isaiah 58:13, it says, it is based on which is written, refrain from pursuing your business and speaking words. By specifying speaking words by verse, the pasuk implies that only speech is forbidden, thought is permitted. From here we learn that the prohibition against using speech in pursuing one's affairs applies only to explicit statements. And this is not explicit statement. Will you join me in the evening? What does it mean to join me in the evening? He didn't say anything bad. The statement of shall we see whether you will join me in the evening is not explicit, it is permitted. That's the position of Bisham Kocha.
No, it's just being slipped though.
Right, so the preceding exposition which was made by Rabbi Yechonon is based on the premise that thought is not automatically treated like speech.
Yeah.
Did Rabbi Yochanan really say that you're not allowed to speak? Speech is forbidden and thought is permitted. Implies that thought is not legally equivalent to speech. Thought is thought and speech is speech. Rabbi Yochanan says every place you're allowed to be mehara, to think about words of Torah, except the place of bathhouse and the lavatory. So what does it show us? That Rabbi Yochanan does treat thought as stringently as speech. It says over there it's a different case. Why? Because we require observance of the commandment. Your camp shall be holy, veleka, and such is not. When a person thinks thoughts of Torah in a bathhouse or lavatory, it's the opposite of kodesh. Your camp shall be holy. Over here too, it is written so that he will not see a shameful thing among you, which implies that speech, davar, is forbidden in bathhouse and lavatories. That part of the pasuk is needed to teach that which was stated by Rabbi Yehuda. It is forbidden to recite the Shema in the presence of a naked idolater. Can't say the Shema in front of a naked idolater. Why naked idolater? What about the Jew that is naked? Are you allowed to say the Shema in front of the Nami? Even a Jew, if he's in front of you, you can't say the Shema. So why does it say God? It says Rabbi Yehuda formulates his rule according to the principle that there is no need to state the more obvious case. There's no need to state that it is forbidden to recite the Shema in presence of a naked Jew because it's obvious. Regarding idolaters, since it's written in regards to them, since it is written whose flesh is the flesh of a donkey. Where does it say it in Ezekiel 23:20? By comparing the flesh of an idolater to that of a donkey. The verse implies that an idolater's nakedness is treated with relative leniency. It is permitted to look at an animal's nakedness while reciting the Shema. Therefore teaches us that it is not true and one may not recite the Shema in the presence of anyone who is unclothed, Jew or idolater. Is to say that this is in fact the case, perhaps one may recite the Shema in the presence of naked idolater. How does Rabbi Yehuda know to forbid this? Scripture state they did not see their father's nakedness. This goes all the way back to Noah. To son Shem and Yafet, his two sons. So going back to Dibur, Dibur mi'asir, but is mere speech prohibited on the Shabbos. Rabbi Chisda and Rabuna both said, it is permitted to make calculations for the sake of a mitzvah on the Shabbos. We may allocate charity to the poor on Shabbos. We may attend to matters involving danger to life and to matters involving the public on the Shabbos. And we may go to synagogues to attend to affairs of the public on Shabbos. Said in the name of we may go to amphitheaters, circuses, and Basilicas.
Basilicas, wow. What does it mean in Basilicas?
Circus. Basilicas is also type of arenas.
That's a round thing that usually
Arenas, no.
No, Basilicas, I don't know.
It says this translation follows order. Rashi explained that there are different types of palaces in which official meetings would be held. It seems that although they were used for purposes of public entertainment, they were also used for civic meetings and assemblies. Lefakeach al iskir rabim b'Shabbos. Why did they would go to in order to attend affairs of the public on Shabbos? Tana Rabbi Menashe, and a Tana of the Academy of Menashe taught, Mishadchin al tinokos leoros b'Shabbos. We may arrange for girls to be betrothed on Shabbos. It's a mitzvah, so you don't push it off. Latinokos latinak lamde sefer ulelamde umnus, and for someone to teach a boy a text or to teach him a craft. In view of the fact that it is forbidden to pursue one's affairs on Shabbos, even through mere speech. Why is speech permitted in the preceding cases? It says, from pursuing your business and speaking words of your business is forbidden. The pasuk implies that only your wants are forbidden, but the business of heaven, matters involving a mitzvah, are permitted. Hence, in the above cases, since they involve the performance of a mitzvah, speech is permitted.
I can understand about the Makarish, the girl, but about teaching somebody a craft, I don't know.
It says in 39, teaching one's son a trade is a mitzvah.
Yeah, okay.
The Gemara in Kiddushin 29a states, whoever does not teach his son a craft, teaches him banditry.
Okay, I got that.
Lacking expertise in any field, the son is without a means of earning a livelihood. Ultimately, he will be forced to turn to banditry to provide for his needs.
I'm not saying not to teach the kids.
Although it is permitted to hire a tutor on Shabbos for these purposes, one may not specify his fee.
Okay, let's say you're going to teach the kid to be a carpenter, but you're going to tell me that the saw and all the tools are muktzah.
It's forbidden melacha, but he can speak to him about it. He can explain to him a lot of theoretical things. Right? Every profession has its theoretical part.
True. Right.
Theory. You want to learn how to be an air conditioning technician. Okay.
Yeah.
You go to a school. There's a school.
I know.
Even before you go out to the field and actually install and uninstall.
You have to go to, and you learn about electricity and about
the
compressor.
Right. So there you go.
But I mean, on Shabbos, I'm going to tell. All right. I guess you could tell me. All right, electricity and compressor. All right. I know about carpentry.
I'm a Yud, I'm a Shmuel. But you can. The idea is also you can speak to him about. If he's interested in this, you talk to the son, if he's interested in this subject.
Yeah.
Back then, it seems like people did not necessarily things that they had to do, but the things that they had a knack to do.
Okay, well, it's good to do something you're interested in.
Right. Calculations of calculation of what is it to you and what of it. What does that mean? This type of calculation, mutar lechashon b'Shabbos. So it says in 42 and 43, maloch, chesbon shemalach means advice or deliberation. Alternatively, it is a contraction of maloch. What is it to you? Either way, it is used here to signify matters that are of no practical consequence to the speaker. He says, one who wants to build a house would have to spend this amount of money. Rabbeinu Hananel and Aruch interpret the word maloch as guest. One may calculate the number of guests you will have on Shabbos, like the previous Mishnah that we learned, provided it does not read from a list. Ma bechach What of it denotes matters that affected the speaker at one time but no longer concern him. For example, I spent this much money on this building. It's no longer relevant. It was done. It's not something that you're about to do. You already spent it.
Well, let's say you're doing an appraisal. Like you're going to want to buy this other house. So somebody says, yeah, I spent this much money on this house over there, and I spent this much money on this house over there.
So to you it's relevant, but not to the speaker. To the listener it's relevant. The speaker is already done.
Right.
So according to Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Shmuel, you're allowed to make such, may be calculated on Shabbos. Tanya Nami Achi, this was also taught in a Baisa. Cheshbon Shavush Hasidin Liya is calculation of things that happened or will happen. Also, Lechashvon may not be calculated on Shabbos Shel Maloch, but calculations of what is it to you. V'shema b'chach mutar lechashvon, and what of it may be calculated on Shabbos. The preceding Baisa forbids calculation of things that happened. The Gemara notes this is apparently a contradiction. This is apparently contradicted by the following Baisa. One may make calculations that are not needed. But one may not make calculations that are not needed with Shabbos. For example, a person says to his friend, so and so many workers on this field. I spent money to hire so and so workers on this field. I spent so and so money, so and so many dinars on this residence. However, one may not say to his fellow, I spend so and so much money, and I'm going to spend so and so much money. This Baisa explicitly permits one to report how much money he spent on something that already happened. I spent so and so many dinars on this residence. It thus contradicts the preceding Baisa, which prohibits calculation of things that happened. And according to your premise, you will have difficulty with the Baisa itself. On the one hand, the first Baita prohibits calculations of things that happened. Yet, on the other hand, it permits calculations of what of it. Rather, you must say that this term, namely things that happened, refers to a case where he still has the wages of the hired workers with him. He has not yet paid them. Whereas this term, namely of what of it, is referring to a case where he does not have the wages of the hired workers with him. He has already paid them. We may not go to await nightfall at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of hiring workers or bringing produce after the Shabbos. This is prohibited because it violates the injunction against pursuing your business on Shabbos. It happened with a certain pious man, that a hole was breached in the fence of his field. He decided on the Shabbos to fence in the breach. When he then remembered that it was the Shabbos. And that pious man refrained and did not ever fence in the breach.
Right.
A miracle was performed, and a caper tree grew in the breach. And it provided his livelihood, this caper, as well as the livelihood of his members of his household. There was sufficient for him and for his household livelihood just from this caper.
Right.
And why did it happen? Because he wasn't bothered by he didn't do anything about the breach on Shabbos. says in number 10, although his transgression was inadvertent,
Before he thought it was a weekday.
because he thought of doing it, he decided on the Shabbos to fence the breach. He forgot that it was Shabbos, and then he remembered it was Shabbos. Venimna, right? The pasman refrained and did not ever fence in the breach. It says, although his transgression was inadvertent, for he thought that it was a weekday, he nevertheless punished himself by resolving never to benefit from it. In the merit of his piety, he was blessed with the caper tree.
Right.
Okay. So that part wasn't clear, that he wanted to do it on Shabbos, and then he realized it was Shabbos. He said, since I wanted to do it on Shabbos, I thought of doing it on Shabbos, I'm never going to do it.
No.
That's what happened.
I thought what it meant was he went by and he saw that they had a hole in the fence. He said, oh, I'm going to fix it after Shabbos. He didn't think, I'm going to fix
No,
it.
but that's not what it says. It says, look at number 9. He forgot that it was Shabbos.
Otherwise, he would not have even thought
of doing it
after
after
the Shabbos an act that forbidden on Shabbos.
Yeah.
After,
He wouldn't even plan if he would have known that it's Shabbos. He wouldn't even make the plans to do it after Shabbos, because he's a chosid. He don't want to think about what I'm going to do after Shabbos.
Right.
But since he wanted to do it on Shabbos because he forgot it was Shabbos, he wanted to do it right away, fix the breach. And when he realized Shabbos, he said, because I thought of doing something on Shabbos, I was thinking of doing mundane thing on Shabbos, I'm not doing it at all. I'm not fixing that bridge. And Hashem is Hashem.
How about you walk by your car on Shabbos?
But it's a chosid. It's not saying that this is a...
But let's say you walk by your car on Shabbos, you see you got a flat tire. I have to fix it after Shabbos. Well, you're not going to... It happened and you saw it. What are you going to do?
A chosid would say, okay, I have a flat tire.
No, you can say, okay. I can say, okay, I have a flat tire, big deal. And then, but you have it in your mind, you're going to fix it afterwards. I mean, how can you not have that in your mind?
You can be Masiach Das, not think about it.
Okay.
Yeah. It says that it's actually prohibited to walk around your backyard and say, oh, I can do this, I can do this.
I got it, but you know...
Making your wish list or punch list for after Shabbos on Shabbos.
But it happens, you walked out of your house and there's your car and it has a flat tire. All
right. A person is allowed to tell his friend, it's permitted for a person to say on Shabbos to his fellow, I'm going to a certain city tomorrow. The reason is that if there are huts at prescribed intervals between his town and the city, he may go there on Shabbos itself. Since there are conditions in which he would be allowed to go to that city on Shabbos itself, he may say that he will travel there after the Shabbos, even if those conditions do not exist. It says in 14, as a rule, one is forbidden to say that he will perform after the Shabbos an act which is prohibited, even by rabbinic law during the Shabbos. It is certainly forbidden to ask a Jew or Gentile to perform such an act after the Shabbos. Okay, Tenan, ein machshichin al atchum lisker pan lo peres. We may not go to await nightfall at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of hiring workers or bringing produce. Obviously on Shabbos bishlam lisker palim, it is understandable that we may not go to the boundary for the purpose of hiring workers. The Shabbos lemotzi yoga, for on Shabbos itself, he may not hire workers under any circumstances. But why does the Mishnah rule that he may not go to the boundary for the purpose of bringing produce. Lema shim yeshar mechitzos maybe. Let us say that he is allowed to do so because if there are partitions there, he may bring produce on the Shabbos itself. You can find a case in which this would be prohibited, namely where the produce is attached to the ground. Since there is no permissible way to detach the produce on the Shabbos itself, he may not await nightfall at the boundary for the purpose of detaching the produce after the Shabbos and bringing it back with him. But Rabbi Menashe has taught the following bais: we may not await nightfall at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of bringing proceed straw or whole straw after Shabbos. Processed, yeah. We may not await at all. We may not await nightfall at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of bringing processed straw or whole straw after the Shabbos. Bishlam Akash, it is understandable that one may not await at the boundary in order to bring whole straw after the Shabbos. You can find a case in which this is prohibited, namely where the straw is still attached to the ground. Elateven, however, as far as the processed straw is concerned, which by definition is already detached from the ground, how can you find a case in which it would be forbidden to wait at the boundary to bring some back after the Shabbos? Besiv nosario, we're dealing with foul-smelling straw. Such straw may not be moved on Shabbos itself under any circumstance because it is muktzah. One may await nightfall at the boundary to attend the affairs of a bride or to the affairs of a deceased person. For the affairs of a bride or a deceased person, yes. But not for the affairs of another person. This is not permitted. It is fine that the Mishnah prohibits preparations for another person which are similar to those for a bride. Also, you can find a case in which this would be prohibited, namely where he awaits nightfall to cut down for himself a myrtle branch. Cutting a branch is not permitted on the Shabbos under any circumstances. One is consequently forbidden to await nightfall at the boundary for the purpose of cutting a branch after the Shabbos, except for the sake of a bride. Ela meis mainu. But in the case of a deceased person, what is the preparation to which the Mishnah refers? La'oviloi or v'sachrichin. It is to bring a coffin and shrouds for him. And the Mishnah teaches that for a deceased person, yes, one may go to the boundary to bring these items after the Shabbos. But for another person, no. One may not go to the boundary to bring them after the Shabbos. Why not? Why is it forbidden? Maybe let us say that he is allowed to do so even for another person, because if there are partitions, he may bring them even on the Shabbos itself. You can also find a case where one is permitted to await at the boundary only for the sake of a deceased person and not for another person. Lemigzo leiglimo, to cut a cloak for him. Cutting a garment is not permitted on Shabbos itself under any circumstances. Hence, one may not await nightfall at the boundary to cut a garment after the Shabbos except for the sake of a deceased person. Quote from our Mishnah introduces the next discussion. Avan machshichin. But one may await nightfall at the boundary to guard his field after the Shabbos. He may bring back produce in his hand. The Mishnah implies that he may do the melacha of plucking produce even before he has recited Havdalah. And is this permitted even though he has not yet recited Havdalah? Question mark. Well, Belazar ben Tignos, Belazar ben Yaakov. Belazar ben Tignos said in the name of Belazar ben Yaakov, also Lo Adam Shaseh Chafotzav Kodim Shavdil. It is forbidden for a person to attend to his affairs before he recites Avdallah. And if you suggest that he recited Avdallah in the prayer of Shemini Esrei, it says, before he plucked the produce, that is inadequate. Why? One who recited Avdallah in the prayer of Shemini Esrei must still recite it over the cup of wine. And if you suggest that he did recite Avdallah over a cup of wine before he plucked the produce, that is not likely, because Basoda Meika is a cup of wine available in the field. They taught the Mishnah in the context of the wine pressing season, when wine is indeed available in the fields. In the west of Eretz Yisrael, they would recite the following words after the Shabbos: he who distinguishes between the sacred and the profane, and then attend to our needs. That is, one may perform malach after reciting the formula, this formula, even before one has recited Avdallah over a cup of wine. Amar Rav Ashi, ki avinan beRav Kahana, when I was at the house of Rav Kahana, and he would chop wood after saying Amavdil B'Kosh L'chol, one who distinguishes between the holy and the mundane. Klal Omar Abba Shaul Kol Shani. Abba Shaul stated a general rule: for whatever I am permitted to instruct, I am permitted to await nightfall. Yibalu, they asked Abba Shaul Ayeh, to which part of the Tanakama statement does Abba Shaul refer? If you say that he refers to the first part, which states, one may not go to await nightfall at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of hiring workers or bringing produce. Then that formulation, for whatever I am permitted to instruct, I am permitted to await nightfall, is inappropriate. It should have been, for whatever I am not permitted to instruct, I am not permitted to await nightfall. Rather, Abba Shaul refers to the latter part of the Tanakama statement of one may await nightfall at the boundary for the purpose of guarding his property after the Shabbos, and he may bring back produce in his hand. However, that cannot be the intent of Abba Shaul's rule either. Because it should have been, for whatever I am permitted to await nightfall, I am permitted to instruct. So we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow.